hear me?
Yes, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, what an honor to have you talk with us. State 48 is a pretty new organization, but I have a long history in journalism and I've covered the West Valley for over a decade, but State 48 is new. So this is exciting for us. So thank you very much for reaching out.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for, again, happy to help and thanks for having me. I think the reality is there's more networks growing and you're one of them. And so if we can keep that up and get good journalism out there, um, it's what the country needs right now. It's what the state needs, is what city, local environment needs. So thank you for doing what you do.
Sure. So before we get started, this is our first time formally meeting each other. And can you tell me a little bit about yourself? So, other than the bio, tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you find yourself in politics?
It's interesting, Jen. I grew up in Ohio, relocated to Los Angeles when I was younger, right after college. And I got in the business and I was executive at a telecom company, Fortune 50. And what I did there was I just excelled and I went up the ladder quite a bit and fast. And I ended up going to another company that was a publicly traded company in telecom. And they relocated me to Portland, Oregon. And so I moved up to Portland, Oregon. This was 2001. So it was a while ago. And I did well there. And then that company sold out to Exo Communications. And Exo Communications, another large company. And so I ended up getting into this real estate business. So I started buying apartments and started realizing that the brokerage firm needs, the brokerage in general of apartments needs better firms. And so I created Joseph Bernard, and we continued to excel over the last 20 years. We're in 3 markets, and we broker private side apartments, anything from 4 units to 200 units. And so that led me to Arizona. I relocated and came to Scottsdale, which is where the politics come into play, to answer your question. I ended up always being involved in politics, but when I got to Scottsdale, I started seeing a lot of changes in the state of Arizona that were very coincidental, that they were similar to Oregon, where I lived, and California. And so my wife said, you need to stop complaining and get involved. So I ended up getting involved, and I met somebody that was in the state, and they said, you need to run for a state office. And so I ended up running for a state representative. 2020, my first election, I won, and then I'm on my 3rd term right now, trying to, again, serve as our civic duty, but also provide something better down at the Capitol, provide the executive leadership, provide experience in people's careers. We don't necessarily get a lot of people that have made a lot of money in their life or have had a lot of success in their careers at a high level go into politics. Very few. And so I'm trying to make the state better and represent the people of LD3. And I've done a pretty good job, I guess, if you look at all the conservative scorecards. And, I'm here for the people, and I'm present, and I listen, and I try to do the policies that the state, but more specifically, my constituents want here at the Capitol. And that's kind of how everything came together.
It's really interesting. So I love politics. I studied investigative journalism and politics, all of that. I served on the Goodyear City Council for a little
Oh,
while.
wow.
And but I think I'm a better resident than I am a politician. And but hats off to you for doing that. And I do think it's really unique. We do need that business background in politics. I think that's really important. I think that's what we're seeing today too at the federal level. It makes a huge difference when you have a business-minded person calling the shots. Do you agree?
I would tell you that, politics and business are different for most obvious reasons. It's policy and it's everything that goes into the world of politics. But it could be better with people with business backgrounds and success in life with a business career, because what happens on a daily basis if you just take the politics and the policies out of the Capitol, I'm only speaking to the state of Arizona. I haven't served as a congressman, yet, or been at the national level, but at the state capitol, and I'm sure every state in the country is the same. There's a lot of business that needs to be done. You have to set agendas. You have to set a schedule. You have to deal with people. You have to deal with personnel of non-legislators, like all the staff, all the security, all the maintenance, everything that goes on at the Capitol. So there's like qualifications you need to be at the top of leadership to run effectively, because you got to deal with people's issues. You got to deal with problem solving. You got to deal with a crisis, and you have to be able to communicate effectively to bring everybody together and solve these problems quickly, or they're just going to get worse. They're going to grow. In business, we'd say, you got to cut the cancer out quickly when it happens inside a company or inside a division, because it spreads quickly. And when it spreads quickly, it dissolves, the good people and the good policies and the goodness of the company, and it could really eat away at the organization and destroy it. And it's the same in the Capitol here in politics. It really is. Yeah, we push policy and we push bills, but there's so much more behind the scenes of what happens on a daily basis. And I think the stronger we are with more legislators that have some form of a business background, or at least managed somebody or managed a group or had their own business and had to make hard decisions and financial survive, and especially turbulent times in the last 2 decades, that comes into play quite a bit. And I think we'd be a stronger state and a stronger country if everybody in the state capitals actually got better talent from, I guess, their citizens that should get involved, that have this qualification.
One of the things I learned early on was we can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, it's about trying to do what's right for the people. And I think, just from my perspective, I see you kind of in this position right now. So what prompted you to reach out? What's on your mind?
Well, I mean, there's a lot going on at the Capitol. I think it's good to get an update every once in a while, but there's the 5 years I've been down there, there's always one issue or two issues that surface every year that becomes a spotlight. It becomes in national news or even just local big news of the state. And we have an issue right now. There's a policy that's coming through the Senate and the House that got a lot of attention. And the attention is because they're trying to change the state constitution, one special interest group, one company, to fix their problem. And I don't think the state should be involved. I don't think it's the proper role of our government right now to handle a special interest of one company that essentially brought the fault on themselves with the problem that was created. And now they're coming to the state legislature to fix it. And I don't think this should be a state issue. I think it should be handled between the city. It happens to be in my city, Scottsdale. But if it was in Peoria or Goodyear or anywhere else, it should be a city issue. If you have a company in your city and they have a problem, work it out with the city. Find the solution with your city council and your city leaders. And I stayed away from a lot of these issues early on until it became a state problem down at the legislature, and that's where I got involved. And it's a policy that's going to change the signature referendum, the petition of citizens to go against city council zoning changes. So if you live in your community and let's say the city council changes a zoning and the citizens don't like it, you're no longer going to have a voice to go get signature petitions and put it to the ballot so everybody in your city can vote for it. That's what's happening right now in the Capitol. And this will affect every city, every community across this state. And it's Article 4 of our Constitution that's getting changed. And I don't think it should be changed for one company. And I don't think it should be changed going forward. And I specifically didn't think it should have a retroactivity clause going back 8 months and changing what Scottsdale residents have already done by putting an issue that I'm talking about on the ballot for 2026. So I have a big issue with that. Again, I don't have anything against company or the people at the company. I just have an issue with the policy, and they brought it to the state level, and I'm going to fight against it.
How in the world did this end up at the state level? I mean, what?
Good question. I think, again, let's get to the specifics. It's a company called Axon, and they got to some legislators to drop a policy, bill that does this. And here's the problem down there. none of these legislators live anywhere near Scottsdale, absolutely hours away from Scottsdale. And they're dropping this bill to immediately affect the citizens of Scottsdale and take the will of the voters away of what they already did with a signature petition. And they were valid signatures. They're trying to complain about the process of getting those signatures and who got them, but the reality is the signature signed them, and it was valid, and it checked through the clerk of the city, and it was validated and put on the ballot. So when you got legislators dropping policy in other legislators' districts without even speaking with them, and actually not getting the pulse of what that city wants or needs, I think that's wrong. And that's what we're doing right now down at the Capitol. And so I'm one of 6 legislators that represent the large city of Scottsdale, because we're carved up in a couple different districts, right? And so there's 2 representatives every district and 1 senator, as you know. So that's 9 people involved in this from Scottsdale at the Capitol. And all 9 of us are against this action. We're against this policy. We're against not even talking with us. That affects our voters, our citizens. And so that's how I got involved. That's how I deeply got involved. And it hasn't been going well at the Capitol with this bill because it's so divisive. And Axon as a company's down there every day, whipping votes with legislators. And I think it's wrong. I really do. I think this is a city issue. It shouldn't be at the Capitol, and we should be telling them, deal with your city. And if you guys figure it out and make some compromise or figure something out, and everybody agrees in your city and the company on how to move forward to build some headquarters with some land use that everybody agrees to, if at that point they need some state help and we're all bought in on this because everybody approved it, then yeah, we'll try to do something at the state level, but we're not going to change the Constitution. Absolutely not.
So March 3rd, I'm guessing this is a day that will probably stick in your memory for a while.
Yeah, not really, but.
Joining me now is the president of Axon, Josh Isner. His company is a leader in developing technology for law enforcement and the military. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
What was it like being called out on Fox Business News?
You wanted to expand your headquarters in Arizona, and you got a problem. They don't want you to expand. What's the problem?
Yeah, sadly, it looks like we might be headed to a new state, Stuart. Arizona really has to decide, hey, is this going to be a state that creates exciting new tech jobs, or is this going to be a state that caters more and more to the retirement community? And they're very much against our new headquarters, and it's causing us to look elsewhere.
Well, what do they say about it? What's the problem?
So, Stuart, to tell you how crazy this situation has become, there's a representative in Arizona named Joseph Chaplik. He represents Scottsdale. Axon's based in Scottsdale. This representative is dead set against our campus because it has apartments on it for employee housing. Now, Stuart, do you want to take one guess as to what Joseph Chaplik does in his full-time job outside of politics?
I'm not going to guess. You tell me.
He's an apartment broker, Stuart. Can't make this stuff up.
Well, that's an interesting day because I've been on national news before, and if you're an effective legislator on the Republican side and you're conservative, you're going to get called out. That's just, this is part of the business. It's a blood sport. You're going to get some group against you at one point or another, some political party against you to smear you because of what you're doing on the conservative side. It's happening across the country. What was interesting here is this is supposed to be a conservative company, I guess, and they smeared me on Fox News, Stuart Varney, and I saw it first thing in the morning. My phone started blowing up, and I really didn't appreciate it. So I let it be. My team started working on a statement to see if I can get back on the show the following day. But then I went down to the Capitol. That was 7:30 in the morning. I went to the Capitol, and as I was walking around at noon in the front lobby, I get blindsided by the CEO, Rick Smith, who verbally assaults me and accosted me on my opposition to this policy, which is wrong in general, of attacking a legislator in the building of the Capitol, of all places, too. But he made threats to me. Told me he's going to end my political career, and then he started attacking my core business of what I do outside the legislature. I just had a problem with that, and I stood my ground and talked to him about it. I'm not a confrontational person, but I'm going to defend myself and talk factual points with him, and that's what I did. And so that discussion went on for about 20 minutes. At one point, I had to call security because he was getting a little overly aggressive with me, standing in my space and really making these threats he shouldn't have been doing to a state legislator. All because I oppose a policy and is going to vote no. So I think that's wrong. after that, it's lingered on for 2 more weeks as they're trying to jam this bill through just to help one company. And I think it's absolutely the wrong thing we should be doing as legislators.
So when you saw this live, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
You know, cool. I'm on Fox Business. That's pretty neat to see Stuart Varney. You know, I did not go on the next day, but he did post my statement with my photo and read it. It was, it was the right thing for him to do, getting both sides of the story. And I think Stuart Varney's a good person. I think he sees both sides when he understands it more. But again, I think he was allowing one side of the story. So I appreciate what Fox Business and Stuart Varney did to allow a second side to the story, which I thought was very well written and clearly stated of what the real, facts are.
He's an apartment broker, Stuart. Can't make this stuff up.
Okay. The Arizona representative who was mentioned is Joseph Chaplik. He responded to Axon's president saying, in part, quote, Scottsdale residents do not want another massive apartment project, 1,900 units, after years of overbuilding. Axon originally purchased the trust land, then manipulated the outgoing city council to change the zoning and save $150 million, which would have gone to fund Arizona schools. The lobbyist bill I have been fighting would undo the citizens' initiative, 26,000 signatures, to vote on this in the next election and forever take the citizens' voice away in Arizona and favor developers. It's a fight, and we will follow it for you.
How did your conversation end with Rick Smith on March 3rd?
It's about 7 or 8 minutes into it, maybe 10 minutes into it, after I called for security and reminded him that I'm a state legislator and a public official that was elected, that you're threatening me on my vote, that's illegal. He backed away and apologized and wanted to reset the meeting. And I'll give him that. He wanted to start over, but just because you want to start over doesn't mean none of that already occurred. And so, I said, look, we'll continue to work. I think it's a city, what I shared already, it's a city issue, and you should be going back to the city, not down here at the Capitol. And again, I'm not a confrontational person. I like to try to resolve that confrontation, which I was doing pretty well at for 20 minutes, just again, having a real conversation with him. It ended with us kind of at a standstill. I'm going to keep opposing these bills. And he said he's going to keep trying to jam them through, because if he doesn't get these bills through, he's going to relocate to Florida because Arizona doesn't want him, which I honestly don't believe. I think other cities would be more than happy to take him. And Scottsdale wants Axon here in their city, as long as they're cooperative in working with us on something that they want to build. And keep in mind, Jen, they bought this land trust 5 years ago. They've done nothing in 5 years to build their campus. That was already approved with this light industrial land use. They didn't build, they changed their plans. They jammed through a lame duck session of city council that all got voted out on their election. All the incumbents, including the mayor, lost their re-election here in Scottsdale because they over-approved too many apartments. It's a hot issue here in Scottsdale. And so they got them to do their last session, lame duck, change the land use to multifamily. And it backfired. And so now they're coming to the state. I think it's wrong. And so that's where I left it. And that's how we're still fighting against this bad policy. I'm hoping that there's some other alternative routes that they may choose to work with the city and work with the new mayor and the new incoming council to figure out a solution. But I'll tell you, changing the state constitution for one company to profit and changing it for every other city going forward is the wrong thing to do.
So I communicated with Warren Petersen earlier today, and I asked him about Senate Bill 1352.
That's the bill.
Yes, and he told me he doesn't know that it's going to really move any further. He said that basically it's, nothing's really happening. He doesn't think that there are the votes for it. What do you think?
There's another bill in the House that they dropped a mirror bill on, which is exactly the same bill, but it moves into both chambers at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That's 2925, HB 2925. What you need to know about the inner workings of the Capitol is, as I was reminded by the speaker, that bill's dead, meaning that bill number. There's ways that you take another bill and you put all that language on another bill, and it has a totally different number. It's called a striker, strike all.
Mm-hmm.
So you take another bill, you take all the language off of it, and you apply this language on there,
And this
or
would
a
be,
variation of that language. And then that new bill number starts moving.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a shady maneuver down at the Capitol. It happens every year, sometimes good, sometimes bad. I mean, again, there's things that are on both sides of the coin, just like this zoning change. I mean, if they change this zoning, it's bad for everybody because in this situation, right, we're opposing a development on land use that we don't want in Scottsdale. But it could be just the opposite. There could be companies out there that want to build something really good that the citizens want, and the city council is blocking them. The citizens will not be able to do a signature petition, put it to a vote on the ballot for all their residents to approve something that they want too. So it does work both ways. Just like a striker sometimes is good, sometimes it's bad. In this case, I think it's bad.
Is the striker Senator Carroll's SB 1542?
Yes, it is. And it's going to be heard Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. at the Capitol. And what's interesting too about that, Jen, is that committee only had one bill all session so far. They've only had one hearing with one bill. So this will be their second bill they've heard. I question that. And it usually starts at 9 o'clock, our committee meetings. It's being moved to 8:30 for some reason. Now, usually you move earlier if you have a busy schedule to get finished by 1 o'clock when we need to go on the floor. Why it's being moved a half hour earlier during rush hour and morning traffic of everybody's lives, of what they have to do with their families, instead of being moved back to like 10 o'clock, because it's only one bill. And 3 hours should be sufficient on one bill to complete it before the floor session starts. So I find that odd that they're changing the time from 9 to 8:30, moving it up on the citizens of Arizona to pressure them a little more to get down there with the rush hour traffic and everything else that goes on in their morning lives.
Okay. A lot to unpack here.
No.
One of the things, so I have been following several pieces of legislation this year. And the one thing that I notice is it's not really Democrat, Republican. I am noticing conservative, conservative. Why is there such a divide in the Republican Party, and especially on this issue?
Great question. I don't know. I mean, a common sense answer would be leadership. I mean, it's top-down organization a lot of times where your leadership sets the tone and understands how a business is going to operate in the business world. And I think it's the same at the Capitol. I mean, your leadership is in charge of everything in administrating what we do on a daily basis. So why are we being divisive with bills on the Republican side? We shouldn't be doing that 100%. I mean, occasionally you have one or two that just surface, and there'll be maybe a handful of folks, 2 or 3, that are against the bill. And again, we're 30 districts. We report the 30 different sets of voters, right? So what's good for one district may not be good for another district. So that is pretty common down there. You know, the rural guys want something out of their districts, and city guys don't, right? So there's some changes there, but most of the time you end up voting for it because if it's good for the state, you do it, right? With what you're explaining, these are controversial bills dividing our caucus, where we're seeing some bills that go up on the board and they're getting 12 to 15 Republicans. I mean, I've been there 5 years. This is what we're trying to stop doing each year. This is not good when you're divided within your own caucus on bills. And I think a lot of it's tied to we're not communicating. We're not talking as a caucus in a group about the real issues that are going on in the session. And there'll always be issues. Let's be clear. There's always issues every day down at the Capitol. How you address them, how you communicate them, and how you cooperate with your group to find a resolution, right? I learned this years ago. You got a problem, whether it's a divisive bill or personalities. You spend 15% on that problem, and you spend 85% of the time on the solution.
Yeah.
And that's how you resolve problems quickly and you move on. But we're not doing any of that. And it's unfortunate. And it's interesting you noticed that, that we're doing more of that this year. It's not good.
You bring up a really good point that I want to get back to, and that is what might be good for one district may not be good for another district.
Right.
So when we first moved out here to Goodyear, we were sold that Estrella is going to be the next Scottsdale, and we're going to have shopping and we're going to have these beautiful homes. I mean, that was the selling point of coming out here to Estrella Mountain Ranch. So in our minds, Scottsdale is this beautiful area, right? Everybody wants to be Scottsdale. Fast forward 20 years, we are less than 20% built out right now. Goodyear
Wow.
is apartments and warehouses and restaurants. It absolutely breaks my heart. But an issue like this, what you're dealing with in Scottsdale, if now that you've got the state taking away the people's right to make these zoning decisions, it would quash us here in the West Valley. Do you think that these folks understand like the larger ramifications?
I don't think so. I think they see it as a Scottsdale problem and they're not in Scottsdale, so they could care less, maybe some of them. I've heard those comments a few times. Like, I don't really care about, your neighborhood, but because it's not in their backyard, but it's going to be in everybody's backyard if they change this. So, perfect example. Let's just call it what it is. Rogue city councils will take payoffs from corrupt developers to jam through a zoning change that they can build, and the citizens will have no say. That's the reality here. That's what this bill will do. And again, it all tacks back to one company trying to get out from underneath the rock. I mean, let's be honest, Jen, they changed the zoning to multifamily. Nobody else. They got city council to do that. Can I tell you that multifamily land in Scottsdale is not worth that much because we've overbuilt apartments, and the sentiment of the voters, like 90% of the voters do not want any more large projects built in Scottsdale. You mentioned the uniqueness of it. You can go anywhere in this country and say you're from Scottsdale. You don't have to say Arizona. They know Scottsdale. And so we're trying to keep that uniqueness as a family-oriented city, right? We want more homes, not more apartments. It's already too dense in a lot of areas. Plus the traffic's getting worse, the water problems, just the congestion of everything that goes on with more apartments and the high density. And we've already built a lot of them, which is why everybody in city council lost their position in their reelection. But when you look at what's going on here, and you look at just the multifamily land that they're sitting on now because they changed the zoning, it's worthless. I mean, I'm a business guy. Which developer is going to buy multifamily land from them if they want to sell it off to build 1,500 to 2,000 apartments on that land, because that's how large it is, when the city's always going to object to it? So they're trying to change the policy for two reasons. One, to get out from underneath this financial rock they've made themselves by changing the zoning, because they can't sell the land. I mean, let's just talk facts here as business. If they change the policy at the state level and they want to sell the land, well, the next developer now can build whatever he wants with apartments. The citizens will not have a say if city council approves it. That's bad. Second, they can change their plan now if they do decide to continue building a headquarters with apartments in it. Again, nobody objects to anything else they want to build. If they build those apartments because they changed the plan and now it goes back to the city and the residents can't do a signature petition again because the policy got changed at the state level if these bills go through. Now we can't have a voice to oppose it. They'll build these apartments. And now let's look forward, because as a legislator, we have to look at the deeper part of policy, right? How does this affect the state? Not just today, 10, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Let's say Axon builds this 2,000 apartment complex that the city doesn't want somehow. And they expand even greater because their business is booming. They're going to go relocate to a larger place. It's just natural. And they're going to sell off their assets, their buildings, and this apartment complex. And Scottsdale's stuck with not a campus housing of their employees, but a regular apartment complex they never wanted. Now, let's say the opposite. Let's say their plan to have all their employees live on campus and work there and live there and basically make it a compound for them with no cars. That's what they're claiming. Well, let's say they can't fill it up. Now they can sell it off as an asset. We're stuck with a 2,000 unit apartment complex. Let's say they implode with all their government contracts and they don't have the sales anymore. And that now they have to start selling off assets. That's the first thing that's going to sell. Let me tell you, the value on this thing is probably, again, without seeing, the plans, because the plans can change and they're not set. You're looking at high-end Class A apartments. In Scottsdale, those sell for about $400,000 a unit. This is an $800 million apartment project. That profit is probably around $400 to $500 million. Are we connecting dots here? Yeah. So they could end up still leaving town, making a $400 to $500 million profit by selling this project off after they build it to an apartment developer, an apartment owner. I mean, this is massive. So there's no guarantee that they're sticking around, and we're sure as hell not the reason why they're leaving. You could build anything you want other than the apartments. And if you really are gun set on building a compound, a campus that you want like Google and Apple, where everybody lives and works in the same, area and doesn't have cars, and I don't know what kind of life that would be. I sure as hell wouldn't want to do that if I was 28 years old again, making 300 grand, like they say. I'd rather live in a house in Scottsdale if I'm living in Scottsdale, but that's just me. But let's just say they want to go 2 exits down on the freeway and buy some state trust land in Phoenix. I'm sure Phoenix will allow them to build what they want and build the apartment complex, whatever else they want to do. So I'm not sure why they wouldn't just go 2 blocks down into Phoenix and build whatever they want.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Why Scottsdale?
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. There's really no sense here. I have some theories. I won't share them with you. But, I just laid out the financial play on this. So you got to start questioning some of this stuff deeper. And I don't know if Scottsdale wants to have 2,000 apartments in 5 years or 10 years down the road if it gets built and they leave town anyway.
One of the hot topics anymore are these 15-minute cities. Is this looking to kind of fit into that, or is that just a totally different topic?
If it walks like a duck, it is a duck, right? I mean, it kind of looks like that. I mean, when you put shopping, restaurants, living and work all together with no cars, and you advertise that we're not going to have cars for congestion on the streets that everybody's worried about, it kind of feels like that. And here's another good question. Like I've talked to a lot of people on this. There's some people that are like, oh, this would be great. We need affordable housing. Well, affordable housing, their employees are living there. How are you going to live there? Second, if it's not employee housing, like I've outlined, these rents are going to be $4,000 or $5,000 a month. At least 3,000. I mean, these are high-end units. So that's not affordable housing. And someone else commented about, oh, it'd be great to have all these apartments and then these restaurants all around them. Well, we already have Scottsdale Quarter and we already have Carroll, which is like that, right? Shopping, condos above. Nobody has said what the restaurants look like, which restaurants, and where the restaurants are going to be located. What if the restaurants are located like a college campus inside buildings that you have to have a card key to get into? How is the public getting into these if they're for their 2,000 employees?
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what that plan is or what the public is going to have to offer to go there and dine. And if they're talking about not having cars for their residents, well, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of parking spaces all around this community where the restaurants are. So it doesn't sound like it's open to the public. And even if it is, they don't have a ton of parking.
Is there a place for Axon in Scottsdale outside of this deal?
Well, yeah, they're right where they are. Just don't build the apartments. The original plan did not include apartments. Nobody complained. Listen, if you lived in Scottsdale for 10 years, right? I've been here 15. if you've paid any attention to if you vote, let's just say you vote in Scottsdale, all right, that means you're paying a little bit of attention to what goes on in the city, in the capital. You would know that nobody wants more apartments in Scottsdale. The pulse of the city is we've overbuilt. People have lost their elections over it. They believe that they're getting too developed in the desert here, and they're taking away the uniqueness of Scottsdale. So that is very easy to see. How a headquartered company that's been here for 10, 15, 20 years has no pulse on the community, that the apartments are an eyesore, nobody wants them. It's shocking to me that their team and their executives have no understanding of the city they're in as a headquarters. And furthermore, if they're just going to strong arm the state policy through legislators to vote for something and turn their back on all the Scottsdale voters, why would the Scottsdale residents want a headquartered company there that has no interest in working within the community of the residents? That's not a great company to be partnered with in your community that doesn't care about your vote or your voice or what you want inside your family community. So it just shocks me that they're this bold, trying to force changes of policy so they can financially gain. Let's just say what it is. That's what it is.
What do you foresee in the next couple of weeks with all this? If you had a crystal ball, what's going to happen?
I think Wednesday is going to be a big day. I don't, my guess is it passes committee because it's stacked that way. I mean, they don't put a divisive bill in a committee that's going to fail, right? The leadership that is administrating the bills and the flow of the bills and the way that they're doing this, there's not even the language on this bill yet. I mean, it's just in the committee. The striker will be added probably soon before Wednesday, but it's kind of uncommon that the striker's not added right now. So it's, I question that as well. I don't think that's a lot of integrity of what we're doing down there, especially for the citizens, right? We're supposed to be transparent for the voters and the citizens, and we're not. I mean, nobody knows that there's a striker going to be added on this unless you've been paying attention. So we're not publicly putting up what we're doing in the committee. I think it's going to pass committee if it gets to that point. I don't believe this will pass on the floor. And if it goes onto the floor, we got a committee of the whole that we're going to do what we can to amend it, to make it a better policy, right, for the citizens, not just for Scottsdale. I mean, again, this affects every community in the state. So we're going to try to amend it and fix it because, I don't think we should be changing Article 4 of our Arizona Constitution to have one company profit while every citizen in the state loses in their communities going forward. It's wrong.
Anything else on this issue? Because I do have a couple of other questions.
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot. Thanks for asking about it. I mean, that's the talk of the town right now. It's in every publication. It's in every discussion at the Capitol. I mean, Axon's been walking around the Capitol for 2 weeks every day talking to legislators. Personally, I don't think they should have after they made a threat and assaulted somebody. I don't care if it's me or anybody else. That should have been handled directly with the CEO and the speaker, and they should have sat down and had a formal apology, not just to myself, but to the body of the House of Representations. The House of Representatives is an institution. There's personnel that work there that are not elected officials. It's the integrity of that body that we need to uphold because that building was here. The Capitol has been here since 1912. It'll be here long after us. And the decorum and the conduct of guests in that building need to be upheld. We should not allow anybody go in there and threaten anybody, even an employee of the House of Representatives. There was a staff worker there that got threatened. We should be talking to that person directly and saying, you do not have access to this building anymore until there's a public statement, not only to that person directly, but to the whole body of the House of Representatives. That's how good leadership runs a place in any organization. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to be transparent for the
Sure.
people who are listening to this portion of the podcast. I have reached out to Axon. I've reached out to Rick Smith and Josh Isner. I have not received a response yet, but both of them are welcome anytime to come on and discuss this as well. So
As you should. Yeah, absolutely. There's always two sides, and But again, I don't believe this is a state issue. This is an issue between Axon and the city. I wasn't involved in anything until it came to the state. And that March 3rd date, as you said, is when I got thrown into it deeply. And
I just can't imagine.
it's
What
not the first time I've had threats. I've had a couple of death threats already in the 5 years. So this is although those are hard to find when they come across the internet, or people make claims on the phone or something. But this was in person, on camera, in the Capitol, in the lobby, right in front of the security desk and 100 other people for 20 minutes. I mean, I just think that's uncalled for.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears. So yesterday we find out that Waymo, of all things, have you heard anything else about this Waymo situation?
Just that they aren't paying any taxes for the road like all the other vehicles. I mean, they have to, I don't know. I haven't really dug into it.
Crazy.
I will tell you this, there's a big fight down at the Capitol. I don't know if it's coming up this year, but it's always, and I don't mean like a big fight, but it's always a big topic that gets fought down there, which is, should we be taxing electric vehicles somehow because of the wear and tear on the road, and the combustion engine vehicles pay tax on gas, that portions go back to the state for transportation, right? And registration fees and everything else. Well, the big question is, how do you get the electric vehicles to pay for their fair share of the road for wear and tear if they don't get gasoline? Now, I think the small percentage of electric cars are very few to all the gas-powered vehicles on the road today. I'm also a conservative and a Republican, and I will not vote for a tax or a fee on anything. So the argument is, should we tax them or not? I'm on the side that I say, no, I don't think we should tax them. Now the Waymo thing surfaces. They're not paying any taxes for the roads, but they're driving on the roads. How many Waymo vehicles are there? I mean, what, a dozen? Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea. 100? I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. I think you've just lumped that in with the electric vehicles and figure out what to do. It's one of those things I don't want to tax or raise fees, because I've told my voters I would never do that, and I haven't yet. But I also look at the percentage of cars compared to the gas cars, and I don't know if it's making a big difference or not. I do think the DOGE in the U.S. government is making a splash with cutting out waste and fraud and just abuse in our tax dollar. I think we have the same here in Arizona. Abuse, fraud, taxation is plenty, as is, and we lowered our tax to 2.5%. And we still have been ends meet with our income tax going to 2.5%. I'd love to get to zero. I think we are a very healthy state. I think if you grow the state with population, with having a low tax or a zero tax, you'll get that money somewhere else with just the economy booming. So I don't believe we need to raise taxes or fees. I do believe we can continue to grow this state and continue to be healthy with revenue. But there's probably some fraud and abuse of our tax dollars as well in this state. But we're the legislative branch. We're not the executive branch. And, DOGE is the executive branch in the U.S. government and D.C. And they're making a splash. I wish I could hire a bunch of people in my committee to go out and start going through, thousands of pages of departments to slash and cut. I don't have that authority, but we are looking at the budget. I am looking at the 4,000 pages of stuff, and I will come out with some recommendations on what we can reduce here in the state. I do it every year on a middle school side. We look at the budget. There's a lot of things we can cut. 100,000 here, 200,000 there, million here. Some people say that's a lot of money, and it is. When you got a $15 billion budget, $100,000 is like a quarter to your pocket right now. So yeah, if we can cut the quarters out, which is the hundreds of thousands of dollars, it adds up. If we can start cutting some millions of dollars, great. I think the universities are getting hundreds of millions every year, which I don't think they should be getting. I also think we squandered a few surpluses in the past 5 years that we could have really, really used differently. I remember my first year, we had a $5 billion surplus. We should have built a brand new Capitol. We really should have. We should have built a brand new Capitol because that is a dilapidated building down there. It's the worst in the country, and it's good for the people to have that. You know, if we had a beautiful campus, state building, House and Senate, governor's building somewhere else on that land, we have enormous space there. We could have state-of-the-art facilities for the public to come down, freely walk around, and participate in both sides, House and Senate, quickly. And then also just the camaraderie that we can build down there with legislators all being in the same building. The synergy is incredible that we could build. We don't have any of that right now. We're in two separate concrete block buildings. There is no Capitol. That is a museum. There's no commonality of us to conjugate and eat lunch or eat breakfast with the senators and the representatives and the governor's office. There's absolutely zero synergy down there. It really needs to be rebuilt. I think we could have done that easily with a fraction of that 5 billion surplus. And then we would have been reaping those rewards today with the state of Arizona, and all the citizens could have participated a little bit deeper in their state government.
What do you think about the deficit right now?
Of the state right now?
Yeah.
I think you have a big problem at the executive branch. I think you have an issue where maybe some revenue was expected and it didn't come in, or money was spent. But again, this is where you have to really dig back and go through all the departments. I was a corporate guy, right? I was a vice president. We had a pretty big budget in my department. And I remember this. I was a young guy in my mid-20s. They said, you need to spend all your budget. I said, well, why? I didn't spend everything. You know, we have perks for things we can do and things we can buy to give out and customer relations. I said, I didn't spend my whole budget yet. They're like, well, if you don't spend your whole budget, you're not going to get more next year. I said, well, I didn't even use what I have this year. And if government would just do that in all these departments, I think we could cut back. But what we're doing is we're overspending, right? If we don't have 100% employment in a division, well, then we got leftover revenue for that, because if we're down 10% in staff, that's 10% of salaries are not being paid. Somehow they use that and waste it, and then they get more next year. So that's the first start, but that takes a lot of effort. To solve the problem this year, I think the executive branch has a lot of explaining to do, and they're failing to explain. And they're failing to come down with factual information and just, you know, admit it. They screwed up and let's fix it. But we have a divided government, right? We have a Democrat governor, Democrat executive branch, and we have a Republican House and Senate legislative branch. But we're not working together. They should come to the table, admit their faults, and let's figure out a solution. We're working on the solution as the legislative side. But again, both parties have to agree at the end of the day when we sign and die. But, you know, the politics play in place. I think if Katie Hobbs comes out and says she admits she screwed up, I don't think she gets reelected at all. I think the Democrats don't get reelected. So they're covering that up.
What do you think happens in the next election?
I think Andy Biggs wins the governor of the state of Arizona. I think he's going to be a tremendous governor. I think he has the knowledge to lead. I think he's a experienced leader. I think he is unique to have some business background. He also has the Senate and the state legislature background, and then he has the U.S. Congress background. He's got all levels to come into the state as an executive. So he has the qualifications, which is key. You got to have qualifications for all these elected positions, and sometimes we don't do that. And then we see what happens. So I think he has all the qualifications. And then I think he's going to lead the state as one of the best governors we had in the last 100 years. Yeah.
What's next for you? Are you going to run again?
You know, I say this every year. I'm going to evaluate every session and decide. I said it since my first session. I said it since my second session. I'm saying it here. More than likely I'll come back. But, I'm also on a short list, hopefully, for lieutenant governor. I think I do a fantastic job having a well-rounded background for that position, with my business and legislative background, and helping Andy Biggs lead this state. But if I'm not picked, then that's fine. I don't really map out a future. I take it one year at a time because everything's fluid, everything changes, right? And so we'll see. But I like being engaged. I like serving the state. I think it's an honor to serve the state, and it really is a unique situation. I wish more people would get involved. I really do. I say this all the time. Get up, get out, and get involved. Run for an office, whether it's your city politics, your city council, your town council, your school board, your state legislator. Become a state legislator, a state senator. Get involved at some level. Corporate commission, your county, your board of supervisors. We need better talent leading this country, leading our states, leading our towns. And there's a lot of people paying attention right now. And I hope they get involved. That's how I did it. So
I think that's so important. And I say to everybody, even if you can't get involved at the state level, federal, the things that we hear about in the news all the time,
yeah,
most important position you can run for is your local school board. Your local school board has such a huge impact on your daily life. And I don't think people really understand that. They don't know it until things start going wrong. And I think these last couple of years, people have really started to see that. But school board, it's a fantastic place to get started.
well, it's interesting. I make this joke all the time, and I'll share it with you, Jen. If you're a business and you have the wrong CEO, the business goes out of business. If you have the wrong employees, you fail and you go out of business. Or you quit. If it's a horrible company you're working for that can't lead and they're not successful, people move on to something else, and the business fails eventually because they can't hire good talent. The government is so different because regardless of what we do down there, we don't run out of money, right? Because it's the government money and we're operating the government budget. And so as horrible as it could be or as great as it could be, we'll never go out of business because we have an unlimited funds of taxpayer revenue coming in, 15 billion a year, and it keeps increasing because we're growing as a state. And you don't usually quit because you're elected, but there's highs and lows. But if we were a company, we'd be out of business, just how we operate. 100%. But every 2 years it changes. Every 2 years is the purpose of keeping government moving, because when you bring in new people every year, especially the House of Representatives, in Congress or in every state, and our senators too, but we have twice as many legislators, you get that new, fresh, attitude of people coming in, a new atmosphere, a new, just a way of doing business for the next 2 years. Different leadership is always elected. And, there's good years and bad years. It's just how government is. And it's good. It's intentionally made that way. And that's why we keep striving as a country, because of the way the founders put us together. And it is thriving, and it will continue to thrive. We may have some low, dark years. I think we just came out of 4 of them, but we will survive as a country, and we will survive as a state. And as things correct each other, the good days, people get fat and bloated, and then they get, complacent, and then you have the bad years. And when the bad years come, there's a rebound, more people get involved, and they correct things. So it's a long, perpetual cycle. And I think we're just in the middle of the cycle, just going through stuff as legislators down there for, the 8 years that we can serve.
I want to thank you for something. You were a huge champion of children during the pandemic, school children.
Thank you.
And I cannot thank you enough for all that you did. My daughter was discriminated against, and she suffered for it during the pandemic. And, it was the few voices that really stood up for the kids that made a huge difference. And you were definitely one of those people. So
thank you for that. I chuckle because that was one of the death threats I got for getting the masks off people. And your kids and other kids really were struggling with it. And it just reminded me of I got smeared on CNN. I got death threats from that smear of me on CNN, national news. all because I wanted common sense. It made no logical reasons to put a dirty mask on a kid that never washed it and stepped on it on the playground, and kids were swapping masks, and the social impact on people, just even at the high school level, what we stole from them with playing sports or their proms or just social engagement of their classmates. They couldn't do anything. There's no expressions with a mask covering up, 3/4 of their head. It was so wrong. I was so against it. If you notice, I never wore a mask at the Capitol. Even in committees where they said we had to, I wore like a little nose screen that I found that was a plastic shield that was unique in a way that COVID approved. But the kids would have still probably been wearing these masks every school year for the flu or for the air quality. I mean, this was a major bill. It just didn't deal with COVID. It said there cannot be any more mask mandates. And for the kids in schools, it was an express. So if they came to school, right, because let's clarify this. I didn't just say no schools can put masks on kids anymore. What I said was the students and the parents will make that decision. And if a student comes to school with no mask on, then the school themselves can't say you need to put a mask on. They've chose not to wear it. If a kid came to school with the mask, then they could leave it on the kid. It's the kid's and the parents' choice. That's what that bill did. And it wasn't just, again, for COVID-19. It was for any mask mandates going forward. And so I really believe kids would have been in masks that following year for sure. Because if you dig back into time, that bill did not become law until 90 days after we got out of session. We didn't get out of session that year, I think, until July 1st, June 30th. So that went all the way into the school year, and they made kids wear masks up until that day. That bill became law into that school year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad we passed that. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, that was a very instrumental bill for everybody in this state because, again, you want to wear a mask, go put it on. If you don't, nobody should be telling you. And the season prior to that, the session prior to that, I got it off the businesses where they didn't have to be the formal federal government mask police in their restaurants or businesses, where they were confrontational with, employees that are 19-year-old girls working a second job has to tell the 200-pound guy to put a mask on or don't come in. And he took his anger out a little bit on some of these employees and, very divisive again and confrontational. We shouldn't be putting people in that line of fire as employees of companies. That wasn't in their description of job duties. And so for the federal government to come in and mandate everybody to enforce that law in restaurants and businesses, it was so anti-American. It really was. And so I freed the businesses to make their own decisions on that again.
Well, I just look back and I just can't believe we lived through all of that. But without people like you, we would have had a much different outcome. I mean, I think we'd still be going through a lot of this. So anyhow, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was interesting 2 years, 2 death threats actually in those 2 sessions, and a lot of angry people, all because I'm giving the citizens of the state of Arizona the right to choose for themselves on their health and their own quality of life that they want to decide on how to live and breathe.
Oh. Anything else you want to talk about? I know I've had you here for almost an hour. I appreciate your time.
This has been great. We could come on again as the session starts wrapping up. We're getting to the last week of committees that we're here in the Senate bills, and then we're going to work through some Senate bills on the House floor, and then we're going to hopefully get this budget wrapped up and sine die. I mean, it's a 100-day legislature part-time job, and honestly, my first 4 years down there, I was there till July 1st every year. And that is 6 months, and it is not intended to be a part-time job for 6 months like that. The Constitution says 100 days, that's April 20th. We should be done with session. I honestly believe legislators want this to be a full-time job because it's like the pinnacle of their life, and it really shouldn't be that way. We should be serving in a manner to go to the Capitol for 100 days and go back to our normal life. We shouldn't be down there full-time. It's not the role of our legislative body. I mean, we should be down there 100 days, get the budget done. It's the only thing that the Constitution tells us to do. It's our constitutional right to pass a budget. We have to do that. All these bills we're seeing is way too many and too much. I mean, if we pass 2,000 bills a year, that's a lot of bills. That's 20,000 in 10 years. Are you telling me we're going to put, 20,000 new laws on the books in 10 years? Why? We don't need that. I mean, we're dropping 2,000 bills a year. We're passing with the Democrat governor probably 300 to 400 of them. When Ducey was governor, we're passing 500 to 800 of them. That's a lot of laws. That's a lot of changes. I don't think we have 2,000 problems in the state alone to just have one session of 2,000 bills dropped House and Senate. So, I think the accurate thing, to do there is we need to weed out bad bills. We need to weed out what's really going on with the bills. Let's get the brass tacks. Let's figure out what the state really needs. Let's pass them. Let's get the budget done, and let's get out in 100 days, go back to our normal lives. I think the state would be better with less of us down there.
All right. Well said.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for all you do. And you're always welcome to come back and talk.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Good talking.
All right.
All right.
Have a good one. Thank you.